Hi everyone, this is Smith with Nuix. In this short video, I'll show you how to use Nuix Adaptive Security to detect and investigate the use of compression or archiving tools like WinZip, 7-Zip, and the Windows native compression utility. Now this is a topic that I frequently get asked about in the context of focused or active monitoring where a user is at elevated risk of removing intellectual property or PII or customer data. And the security team just wants to be able to observe if data is being prepared or staged prior to being removed. So with adaptive security, you kind of have two main tools, the security and forensics team does, to deal with this. And the first is programmable logic on the endpoint. And we have a couple of rules here looking for process activity and file system, file write activity by compression tools. And this is meant to be used kind of continuously and on the fly by the security team to create and customize their own detections and to tailor those detections for their environment. And then the second tool that we have is event data that's collected by the endpoint agent and streamed back to the server. And we can use that for investigations that are in real time or near real time. So let's take a look at how this all works. And I'll start by just running the WinZip program here. And once I launch WinZip, we should get a alert indicating that compression utility has been started by a user. And the alert will nicely summarize here for me that it was WinZip 64 running under Explorer that did this. Now, if we actually create a archive file, and I'll save it as, and I'm going to call it NewZip2. And close WinZip. And we should see a couple more alerts here. Now these are file alerts. We're actually seeing a file write that either ends in .zip or somewhere in the file path contains .zip. And you can see that both Explorer and WinZip are actually doing that when the user creates the archive with the WinZip process. So let's try it with 7-Zip. I'll close these alerts here. And then go back to the endpoint. And we'll use 7-Zip. This is kind of an interesting problem because you do have to deal with multiple different ways that a user could perform the compression activity. So let's just add this to energy bands research.7-Zip. There's the file we just created. And from an alerting standpoint, we should see both the process activity here where the user started the archive utility. This time it was 7-Zip. And then we also saw the file detection. Now this is a good case where just we can explore this and use our event data to do a sort of real-time triage on the fly investigation of the files here. So I'll right click and pivot into the files data. And we can see the energy bands research by 7-Zip, .7-Zip. We can see the path to that. And in a 7-Zip file write like this, if I right click and select download file, this is a good opportunity to use this download file tool within Adaptive to retrieve the 7-Zip file that was created and then save it back to the local machine. And while that is going, oops, there we go. And again, this is going to retrieve the 7-Zip file that the user created and save it back to the security operator's desktop. And we can see that here. If I open it up and drill down, it's going to preserve the path to the file. And there's energy bands research.7-Zip. Okay, so that is WinZip and 7-Zip. Now the last one that we have to deal with here is Windows native compression. So I'll close these two alerts. Go back to my Windows 10 system And we'll use the Windows native compression on this file here. And now I've got graphene review 2015.zip. This was created just by right-clicking it and using the local tool in Windows. So we won't see a process event for this, but we will see Explorer running under user init, running, creating a file with .zip in the file path. And again, we can explore that if we go pivot events files and look at the file artifacts that were tracked. And this is where it becomes important to look inside the full file path for evidence of a zip, of the .zip. Okay, the graphene review file that we just created is this one here. And so we can see we have some temporary artifacts, some .tmp artifacts, and some link file indicators of that, as well as our 7-zip file. So another thing that we could do from here, if we wanted to further explore this, is begin to examine the file paths by these that occurred here. And the file path will give me an indicator of where this activity occurred, and we could actually review the file system on the endpoint. So if I right-click on this and click View File System, that will allow me to drill down into the user's directory. And for example, if I want to look into documents or look onto the desktop, we can do that right from the file system view here. And here's NuZip and NuZip.2, which we created earlier. And again, if we wanted to retrieve these, we can just do it by right-clicking and downloading. All right, well, thank you very much for your time, and I hope this was a useful introduction to using adaptive security to look for file archiving and compression utilities.